We're super excited to have Natasha Deon with us this evening. There's an awful lot I could say about her. She's an NAACP Image Award nominee, a practicing criminal attorney, and a college professor at UCLA and Antioch University. She's the author of the critically acclaimed novel Grace, which was named Best Debut Fiction of 2016 by the American Library Association's Black Caucus and a Best Book of the Year by the New York Times. Natasha was also a 2017 US delegate to Armenia as part of the US Embassy's reconciliation project between Turkey and Armenia in partnership with the University of Iowa. In that role, she founded Redeemed, which is a criminal record clearing and clemency program that pairs writers with those who have been convicted of crimes. If you're getting the impression that her interests and talents are wide-reaching, you're absolutely right. And not only that, she's an LA native, a wife and mother of two, and her new novel, The Perishing, which was released just this week, I think, it's already in its second printing, which is phenomenal and well-deserved. The Perishing has been named a fall 2021 most anticipated book by so many people. Indie Next, USA Today, the New York Times, Essence, Shondaland, Publishers Weekly, Book Riot, Library Journal, LitHub, Crime Reads, and The Millions. And The Perishing is more than fulfilling the promise of all of those anticipations with the rave reviews that have only just begun to come out. And as I said, it's only been in the world for less than a week. I pre-ordered a copy a long time ago and have still not been able to get my hands on it, but fortunately I did get to read a PDF. So all to say, we really couldn't be more happy and grateful to be able to end our season with Natasha and The Perishing, and that we're able to be part of her book release week, which is so exciting. Welcome, Natasha.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. I'm so happy to be here. It's an honor. It really is. And to hear my bio being read, I'm just like, who is that? I was like, let me see. It's
pretty phenomenal, I gotta say. I'm sure all of you, after experiencing today's performance by Imani, will want to read The Perishing. But before we start the presentation, I had a few questions for Natasha. Hopefully they're ones you've had as well. One of the things that really intrigues me about The Perishing is that from all of the reviews I've read, and there've been quite a few, so many reviewers say, first of all, it's a novel that defies description. Of course, then they go on to describe it in their own terms, and all of them are a little bit different. But one thing they all seem clear on is that the novel is deeply steeped in LA history and culture. One review that I'm sure you love, Natasha, as I did, refers to the novel as a startling, luminous love letter to Los Angeles. That's just such a beautiful phrase. I wanted to ask you, how important is LA to The Perishing, and why the 1930s? For LA? And what was it about this time and place that drew you to it?
Oh, there's so many reasons. I guess I'll start with the craft part of it, or the history part of it, before I get into sort of the spiritual part of it. So historically, W.E.B. Du Bois said of LA of that time, of this time period, is that it was the most well-housed group of Black people in the nation at that time. It was the Beverly Hills for Black people, where 70% of African Americans in Los Angeles own their homes, which was higher than any number anywhere around the world. And I'm talking about South Central LA, as in where all the gangster rappers now come from. And then, and all those movies about gang life, and it's a poverty-stricken area now. So I was curious to know how it went from here to here and the path that it followed. So that's what I'm looking at in this snapshot. And it was also between two world wars, between World War I, World War II. We see the rise of Hitler in that time, and so many other things, the Route 66, and how communities were decimated. And how Black people were, last hired, first fired. They weren't given loans, and just everything that sort of fed into that. And I guess the more spiritual part of that, or what I say, is the genesis of this book was a dream. Similar to my book, Grace, where it was a dream that was sort of horrifying. This was also a dream that scared me. I woke up and it was a nightmare, but it was confusing because in this dream, I was a character in the dream and I was in love. I was in love with a Chinese man. And I remember the details so vividly that when I woke up, I was crying and I started Googling, could these people have possibly existed? She was this white passing Black woman in love with this Chinese man. And these things happened. And I knew the time that it was because of the architecture of the area. I knew it was the late 1800s. And I found information about the Chinese Massacre of 1871 that happened in Los Angeles. So I thought, you know, wherever this comes from, I want to honor it, honor this dream that I felt was given to me and that felt real. And like I said, it became chapter 35 of the novel. And then I had to figure out how could this possibly exist in 1871 with a story that I needed to tell about the 1930s. So Grace was sort of up through the end of American slavery and what happened. And so 1930s is when, you know, the soldiers started coming to Los Angeles. You know, it was one of the only parts of the nation that wasn't devastated by the Civil War, that was, you know, growing. Mm-hmm. So I knew that's where I wanted to set it, and also to honor the City of Angels.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much. It really is one of the things that fascinated me reading The Perishing was the role of history and history that we don't get taught in school. Things, you know, shocking and important things that happened in LA that I knew nothing about. So I really thank you for bringing those things forward, but then turning them into story. So it's not as though it's a history lesson. It's a riveting story. So thanks for that. So second question, the New York Times review describes The Perishing as one part lyrical mystery, one part history lesson you didn't learn in school, one part time machine, a lush, genre-smashing philosophical experience of a novel that blew my mind even as it broke my heart. History, as you've said, and in particular, America's history of slavery and its aftermath are important backdrops in your narrative. Maybe can you tell us some of the genre-smashing choices you made in crafting these narratives and whether the issue of history had some part in that? And I think you've kind of alluded to that with the dream.
Yeah, you know, I'm going to be honest, Dorothy, when I wrote The Perishing, all I had was the dream. And then I knew I wanted to tell this history, but I didn't know that I was smashing genres. I didn't know that people would describe it as fantasy or magical realism, you know, because I think I live in a world where I've seen miracles and I've had these weird dreams, and so it's all true, you know, all of it is true to me. So even this dream that happened in the 1800s was real because I experienced it, and I can say it's what happened. You do what you want with it, but let me tell you what happened. And so that's what it was for me. It was always, this is what happened, and let other people decide. So marketing decided, well, you can't tell people about your dreams, Natasha. So therefore, fantasy. I was like, okay, all right. However, whatever you got to do, you know, so, and that's kind of how it came. So I wasn't trying to smash genre. I was just trying to tell a story, the story of us, of Black people in America, and how we struggle so much with what history is. And I was having this conversation earlier today about, you know, critical race theory. So I wrote a essay for the LA Times about that, and how so many people don't want to teach, you know, race and things like that. I said, it's really hard to tell American history without showing the differences that we've historically had in the past and even now. You know, at the time that slaves were released in 1865, over 3 million Black people, you know, you could say slaves, but they were colored like me, right? They were different shades of Black. 3 million walked off of plantations for the first time as free people. And in that time, hundreds of thousands of mostly white people fought for the right to keep humans as slaves, including sex slaves. So when we're talking about like Thomas Jefferson's slave, the president of our country, she was 15 years old when she had her first baby out of 5 or 7 of them. So when we're talking about this institution that they fought and died for, and people will argue that the Civil War wasn't just about slavery, but it was totally part of that. Their right to own human people, not just that person, but their children perpetually. And I don't think America has really come to grips with its founding in that way. And that's not just to punish, but it's to be accountable, to be responsible, and to make sure it never happens again.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's a powerful essay, and we can probably put the link to it in the chat. I read it this morning, and it really gave me a lot to think about. It's true. We want to just turn the page and say that was then, this is now. But one of the things that I think the Perishing does such a great job at, and it's part of the genre smashing, is making us think about the fact that it was then and it's now. And if things don't change, it will be the future as well. So, and I really loved you saying you certainly weren't setting out to smash any genres. I don't know that one does do that, but you bring an unusual knack of making the scenes and characters feel immediate and of this world, nothing fantastical about the actual characters. It's just that what is happening to them and the changing world has elements that, remind people of other genres because they're not of their experience, but it's really well done. So another question. While the characters in The Perishing certainly suffer and the realities of racism and the inhuman treatment and lack of consideration for others are integral, kind of what you were just talking about with how folks fought to preserve slavery and now fight not to have to talk about it. I nonetheless, after reading the book, came away with an abiding undercurrent of optimism somehow, a sense of striving, hope, and perhaps above all, persistence. And this felt especially true for your main character, Lou, a young Black woman. She exhibits such grit and agency. I wondered if I'm right in projecting this sense of hope, or if I was projecting, and whether those positive undercurrents kind of align with your own belief system and life perspective.
That's a great question, Dorothy. And it actually makes me really happy that there's hope, because part of what I would want to do is to foster hope as a mother, but not just as a mother, as a human being who cares about the future. I want to foster hope of all the voices out there. There's so much to be sad about, like rightfully so. There's so much that we're all grieving deeply. I want to be a person that fosters hope. And my hope was that the book would speak to the hope and the opportunity that we have, because we can be anything. Even right now in this place, we could be anything, and we could choose to be something good. So as an attorney, a criminal defense attorney, even this week, I argue that the things that they've done in the past is not who they are today. They give them another chance. I ask the court for mercy so that when they apply for a job or travel out of the country or get housing, that this crime that they committed, whether it was a DUI or a shoplifting, and sometimes they caused the death of somebody, is it enough time? Was this meant to be a life sentence? Can they move on? But in order to do that, I never say to the judge, hey, judge, you know what? This happened in 1995. Can we just turn the page? Like, I would never. Who would do that? I expect my clients to take responsibility, to show accountability, what they've done since then, to atone for what they've done. And then after they've admitted to what they've done, they're not saying I'm not guilty. They're saying I did this, and can you give me another chance? And America hasn't come to that. We're saying we don't want to show any of that. We just want to give us another chance, because time has passed enough. And it doesn't, our country, there is redemption, Shelley. Thank you for that. and our country hasn't come to terms with its own legal principles, which is about redemption, but you have to take responsibility and accountability. And hiding the past is not an option.
Yeah, no, well said. And I feel like that's really what you succeed at doing with the perishing. You hold a mirror up to all of these things by telling story. So it's not at all dry. And, you know, what I wanted everyone to hear is that while the subjects are maybe hard to look at, it's not an accusatory thing in any way. It's just saying, these are these women, this is what happened. And I did feel hopeful at the end. I felt like, you know, Lou was going to continue on in some next incarnation and do wonderful things. So yeah, it was a positive experience overall. So shifting gears, I was shocked to read in one article that you are a master's candidate in clinical psychology at the Fuller Theological Seminary. And this made me wonder, when on earth do you sleep? And are you planning to add yet another career to your already busy life?
That's so funny. Someone told me, you know, you get like a new master's level degree every 10 years or so. I was like, really? I was like, I'm not counting. I'm just walking. I don't know. And for me, it's just what it means to be a Black woman, you know, to keep reinventing yourself, to keep moving. And, you know, we live in Black people in America, much like the Asian culture, or even, you know, some, you know, Jewish culture, I would think, you know, we're a collectivistic, you know, culture where other people in our families affect us, uncles, children. So even having children changes the course of your life, and you have to reinvent again. And then doing something, and you're trying to hold on to that core of yourself all along while you're sort of knocked around in life, but always restarting. So even George Floyd changed the course of my life. He's not even related to me, but all of this, you know, it's a different way to see culture and life. So all my degrees, I think, reflect where I feel like I'm called to. So I was called to law. I was thrown out of a courtroom. So I was like, I'm never going to be thrown out of a courtroom again. So I was in law school 6 months later. My master's in writing because of the other dream that I had that became Grace, the first chapter of Grace. And then in psychology, I was just hurting so deeply. And I knew I needed to heal, and I needed to start with my first language, which for me was the Black church, in my faith, and being rooted in, it was a church that was, you know, a lot of them came from Dr. Martin Luther King's church after he was assassinated. And so they came to LA in the Great Migration, and they were part of this church. So I needed to go there and heal and grow, and not just cope, but heal and thrive.
Yeah, well, I love that. And I can't help but observe that in the perishing, many of your characters are immortal and they keep changing and evolving. And, you know, what you're describing is a lifelong quest to learn and grow and go where your faith and your intellect take you. And I think that's super admirable. Just one last thought before we get into the performance. I also read that you had always envisioned these books as a trilogy, that there's another to come. And my personal question, because I loved her, is will we see Lou again?
That's a great question, Dorothy. You know, I just started the next book. So in the opening of The Perishing, there's a chapter, and I don't think this is a spoiler, it's called Charlie. And that character was a carryover, or at least the grandfather that's in it is a carryover from Grace. And it's just sort of an Easter egg for people who've read Grace. And it'll continue probably in the life of Sarah, to sort of finish out what I see as a trilogy. It could be more. It could be Lou. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm just tossing my vote in there. That, you know, with all this incarnations and immortality, if she could be in there somewhere, you know, getting her degrees or whatever she's going to do, president.
I hear you. I want
That'd be
that.
great president. And with that, I know you're probably all tired of hearing my voice, but this really was a wonderful reading experience, and so great to see Natasha again. I will turn it over to Jessica Lasky.
Very happily, thank you. It's so fun to hear you talk, Natasha, about all of the elements, because the book is so complex, and in the best way, because like you said, Easter eggs, but even just reading it, it's like all the little morsels that you keep getting. So I'm just really excited to hear you talk about it. But my job is to introduce our actor for this evening, who is Imani Mitchell. I'm very excited to introduce her. This will be brief. I will just sort of give you some highlights of her bio. But if you want more information about her, I will give you her website and I'll pop that into the chat. But also, I did a longer form interview with her on the Stories on Stage website blog. So if you are intrigued, feel free to go over to that and you'll find out more about her. But briefly speaking, Imani Mitchell is a writer, director, actor, and filmmaker. She's a multi-hyphenate. She was born and raised in Sacramento, and she developed her love for acting and storytelling at an early age. She received her associate's degree in theater arts with an emphasis in acting from Sacramento City College. From there, she went on to act for various theaters within the Northern California area, including Celebration Arts, Capitol Stage, and B Street Theater. And most recently, she directed a production of Pipeline at Celebration Arts. And outside of theater, Imani is dedicated to the art of filmmaking and developing her craft as a writer and director. In 2019, she founded her film company. And I neglected to ask you this, Imani. Is it IM Studios? Because it's IAM, but is it IM?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Just something that I didn't ask her that. So her film company is called IM Studios, and she wrote her first film, Whirlpool. And actually, there is a trailer of that on her website, if you're interested. And the mission of IM Studios is to employ and support talent of color and showcase stories that are authentic, nuanced, and impactful. And currently, her second film, entitled I Remember Yesterday, is in post-production with a plan to be released this winter. So hopefully we'll be seeing that soon. And her website is imanimitchell.com. I will pop that in the chat, as I mentioned. But otherwise, we're very excited to have her here. And Imani, whenever you are ready, take it away.
Hi, thank you for having me. Okay, so without further ado, this is The Perishing by Natasha Deon. Chapter 0, Part 1, Sarah. My name is Sarah Shipley, and I've slept with 5 women. Since I married a man, no one asks the kind of persons I choose anymore. I've been married 6 times, all of them men, all of them taken from me by God or by man. Death in all cases. My first husband is who I remember most. First husband was born in 1948 and was murdered, just like my third, but I wasn't surprised. Devastated, but not surprised. We're all on the verge of somebody else's violence. It used to scare people when I'd let down my guard and confess that my husbands were murdered. They would call me cursed, not unlucky. In fact, the word unlucky would only be used by those who thought I had something to do with it, because no one's that unlucky. So now when people ask how my husbands died, I say they stopped breathing. And for my own sake, I don't remember the faces of those who took their breath anymore. I was 40 years old when first husband died the first time. And in every life, 40 is the age when I start losing things, memories, my glasses, my friends. The frequency of their deaths make dying pedestrian, but not always. Sometimes it is life-altering. Hurts me to watch the anguish of others who don't understand it's not always over, not for everybody. First husband was devastated when he lost his mother, Florence Mary Clay. She had 9 kids. In 1956, when he was 8 years old, Mary walked off the cotton fields to work cleaning classrooms, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., $2 a week slave labor. But we all thought we were rich, first husband said. Mary was the first woman janitor at his school in Mississippi, preschool through high school. One school for all the Negroes, and she kept the whole school clean by herself. At lunch, she worked in the lunchroom, making sandwiches for all of us children, he said, serving warm plates and apples. Never missed a day. So folks respected my mama. On Sundays, he and his brothers would walk up Columbus Street, their skin dark as wet soil, and their new haircuts lined and shaped into something like a helmet full of black flowers. They'd wear Sunday suits then, each pressed paper hard and without crinkle or sound, hand folded around their bodies like wearing origami. Folks would point and say, "Those are Mary Clay's kids," and they'd make room for them. That's how I knew about people, he said. Not by the way they treated me, but by how they treated my mama, respected her. That's how I decided who I liked and who I didn't. The other children at school would straighten their chairs and pick up trash before the school day ended because they knew my mama was coming. First husband was 18 years old when his mama died, 61 years of age. So at her funeral, he started counting down his own life because he was convinced he wouldn't outlive her. He counted 43 more years to make something of himself. First thing he did was call off the wedding. You see, his girlfriend, Olive, was pregnant, and marriage was the Christian thing to do, but since his mama was gone, they had no reason to pretend to be religious. So he moved to California, and Olive said that she'd stay with her family in Mississippi to have the baby, and that was that. By the time I met first husband, he was 32 years old and had already stopped chasing the son he'd abandoned. He decided the best thing to do was to wait and let his son find him when his son was ready. And every day that birthday edged him closer to 61. He reminded me that he didn't have much time. I know I'll die by 60, he'd tell me, because I'm not worth more than what mama had. I'd argue. I'd tell him no one could know when his time was to die, but he said he did know, and then he proved it. First husband died at 60 years old, and I don't disagree with him anymore. Chapter 0, Part 2, Sarah. When first husband was 13 years old, he had a best friend named Sammy. At 13, Sammy told him, "I'll be dead in a week," and was. My husband and Sammy were in the Mississippi Youth Gospel Choir together, and they had been invited to sing at a church in Alabama. The pay was food and shelter and rumors that Mahalia Jackson would be there. Mahalia was Sammy's savior after Christ himself, a goddess. And she was the reason Sammy's mama never broke his legs. His mama had heard that Mahalia had the same condition as Sammy. Legs bowed like a wishbone from his hips to his feet, yawned open at his knees, and hardened like roof pitches curved outward. Mahalia was the only Black person alive, she thought, with legs like his. So Sammy's mama did what Mahalia's mama did. Instead of having the doctor break and reset his legs straight as prescribed, she rubbed her boy's legs down with grease and bathed him in boiled dishwater. The heat was tolerable. It would relax the bones, she thought, like chicken bones tumbled in hot broth, softened and flexible, and would dry stiff and straight in the sheets she'd wrap around his legs at night. And come morning, his ankles and toes were blue from the tight bandages. It would take time, of course. The hope of this cure is why Sammy's legs never got broken. They never got healed either. Each of the kids, if they were going to go on the trip and sing, had to pay their own bus fare. So the whole choir got good at chopping cotton for nickels a week. Sammy and my husband, who was then just Billy Clay, put in hours every day from first light to nightfall, singing songs that Sammy had made up and written in ink on his arm with the ballpoint pen he had found under the bus station bench. Sammy's falsetto became like the sweet sound of a cooing woman, so good that he earned himself the lead spot in the choir. But 5 days after they were supposed to leave on the bus, Sammy's mama told Sammy that she had used his travel money. She said, "You need to pay for school clothes and not some trip to Alabama." Sammy was so disappointed when he found out about his money that he fell on the ground, crying right in front of everybody. And after he begged his mama one more time, unsuccessfully, with dirt and straw tumbling down from his cheek, he made a new wish. A few days later, he started telling his friends, "You're not going to see me anymore." "But Sammy," my Billy said, "you'll see me, right? We're best friends." "No, not even you, Billy." The day before the choir left for Birmingham, Sammy asked Mary Clay if she'd make him his favorite dump cake, and she did. So before the bus left, before Sammy's week was up, Sammy and Billy snuck into the church building, sat in the pews, and ate a mess of pineapple and peach and butter and nuts with some mint, all dumped and baked into cake batter. The end result was a distinctive flavor of strawberries, proof that dump cake is life. No matter what you put in it, no matter what you try, how you're received is not always up to you. And when they finished, Sammy sang what my husband described as Sammy's last bit of sweet lovely, his notes high and soft like a fairy. It was the Wednesday of the ride back home from Alabama when everybody heard the news. Mrs. Johnson had phoned ahead to the school to let them know our failure, runners up out of 25, and that we were on our way. When she got back to the singing hall to meet us, no one noticed her changed expression before she told us flatly, "Get on the bus." It made sense to all the children because we had come to win, after all. It had been hot that day, my husband said, and the night hadn't cured it. So the starless 11 p.m. sky was like a boiled rag thrown over Birmingham, our bus and oven, its windows bleeding with moisture. First husband said that about halfway through the ride, Mrs. Johnson stood up and gripped her seat's back cushion, full-fingered, making frown lines in the plastic. Then she told everybody what happened. That earlier that day during summer school, some big kid in the lunchroom lifted Sammy up by his collar, then pushed him into the wall in such a peculiar way that it broke Sammy's neck. 13 years old, and he died instantly. My husband's mama was the one who had to clean his urine off the floor. So you see, we know, my husband told me, Sammy is proof that there's no point in trying to outlive the date you've been given. Folks like us, we just need to leave something good behind. But you, not you, he told me. You've got forever, he said. He said it because I told him everything, because I promised to try to find him again, because I can't be sure I can, because some people are bonded over lifetimes, not a soulmate, a wasted term, but a kindred spirit. No, not spirit, the inarticulable part of ourselves. Everybody I love dies. And no matter, most people won't survive everyone who loves them. Our lives are meant to mimic a passing breeze that won't return. Not me. I have to live with my losses forever. Life after life in new bodies, new cities, and new countries where I've always been Black, not always a woman. But people who are meant to be in our lives will find us, no matter how far we wander. Even if when we find each other, we're lost together. So sometimes I'll find my pair like first husband, even though I won't search for him, even though I promised. Because for a while, I'll forget our before this, and finding him will be like a rediscovery, a shock of holy hallelujah. We're supposed to forget ourselves and each other after this. But I remember because I'm broken now. He won't remember because he's not. This is my undoing. Chapter 35, Sarah. Before him, I'd never made love to a Chinese man. He was prettier than I was, and his cheeks were always red from his soul blushing. He was also a healer, a doctor. His hands were the medicine, acupuncture, and massage, along with the sweet herbs and bitter roots he'd prescribe. It was 1871 then, my first year in Los Angeles, I thought. And in 1871, I woke for the last time near him. It was early morning at the inn. The sun had just reached into my window and painted the ceiling with a stroke of yellow. The empty sheets he had left beside me smelled of sandalwood, his favorite incense to burn. We were in this bed together. I felt the coolness of his silver coins sticking to my naked side. He always gave me money, not because I charged for my affections, but because he could never marry me. I was a white woman, or that was the understanding because of the pale shade of my skin. But I was in fact the child of a Black woman and a Scottish man, which meant Black, but I could pass as white if no one knew. And in either case, for me, a white woman and a Chinaman, there was nothing more to be done to solidify our relationship. Buy you a dress, he told me. Shoes to match, he said. And his English with his Southern cowboy drawl was good, his Mandarin impeccable. He was the most popular doctor in Los Angeles because of his charm and because he knew how to heal bodies. Me and his wife's separately. Most Chinese of our time were day laborers who'd come west for economic opportunity, and later they'd be building the first transcontinental railroad on the Central Pacific. But for now, for us, LA was the Wild West, and we lived in Negro Alley. Not Negro because of its residents, but Negro because of who owned the land, the Afro-Spaniards. But every kind of person lived here. Quick draws and prostitutes, pastors and gamblers, Chinese and European, Mexican and Spanish. But it was known for its saloons and brothels and having only 2 sheriff deputies, men who had come to Los Angeles to escape their past and be anonymous. And the state of California hadn't been ravaged by the Civil War. Ex-Confederate soldiers came in droves and left their losses behind, and many moved farther south of Los Angeles County to build lives in the county of Orange. I was thinking of him when another coin slipped from the sweat on my pale hip. Then another fell on my ribcage, tickling. When I rolled over, the last coin dropped from my navel, completing another $1. Even though he was in Los Angeles before I arrived, I told him he came here for me. There was no doubt in my mind because of the way he put his passion behind his patience, his control, his quiet ebbing, all in pace with mine. So when I woke that morning in the empty sheets among the cool coins, I wanted to kiss him behind his ear and tell him I loved him and that I wanted to go someplace where we could exist together. I was on the stairwell later that morning when I first became afraid. Just outside our room, steps away from the door, there was a bloody handprint against the wall, pressed then smeared. The red fingertips, a contour of war paint on the face of the inn's adobe. Too small to be his hand, wasn't it? I searched for him, asked around for him. Dr. Yi, I asked a man in the courtyard. Dr. Yi, I asked another. Everybody was on their way, somewhere in a hurry toward the commotion in the streets ahead, the loud noises in the distance. When I headed toward it too, I felt a hand on my forearm squeezing my weak muscle. It was the young man who swept the church steps. He was my age, 23, 24, blonde and never married, without children, though white people were always promised more here, a better life. That usually means a family. What's the ruckus? I said, pointing the way of the shouting. They've seen you two together, he said, holding me by my weakness. I'd advise you to come into the church with me. I told you I'm not going in that church, I said, and now's not the time for inviting. Gunfire erupted, warning shots, not followed by gasps or screams. It ain't nice up there, Justine, so just come in here with me and I'll give you what I can so you can leave. Leave why? I haven't done anything wrong. If somebody pointed a finger at you, they'd remember you being too friendly with the Chinaman. And this was true. We had been in love for 3 months by then, all out in the public and on display. He had once kissed me in the barn behind the saloon. If you weren't a pastor's daughter, he said, I'd have it in my mind to let you go on up and chance your consequence. But as it is, you need to leave town. I didn't leave. I didn't sleep again in my dream either. I remember staying up through the night and learning the next morning that there had been a massacre that left 17 Chinese men and boys dead. All were lynched on Commercial Street, swinging above upturned wagons. And that afternoon at his burial, I remember feeling robbed of my right to grieve for him with other people who loved him as much as I did. A consequence, because I wasn't his wife. I was just another stranger in the crowd paying my respects. And in my silence, I honored what he deserved. A family left in peace. I had a funeral for him alone at home, holding the paper. A single black and white image of his body, their bodies, hanging from the gallows, reminded me of drying flowers in a lover's doorway. Precious roses, I had to tell myself, and one of them was my doctor. Life changes so quickly in Los Angeles. You can sleep late one morning and wake up to a new and unexpected city. Thank you.
You're getting bravos in the comments.
Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful, Imani. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. Imani. Oh my gosh.
Oh, thank you. That was wow, especially the last excerpt. Natasha is like, I could just feel it, it's just, yeah, it's just very emotional to get through, but just, yeah, the way it's written is so incredible. Yeah.
Wow. Imani, and to hear it, like so many times I've heard the voice in my head and you just brought it times 1,000. And oh my God, I was like, no, I know what's gonna happen. No. So great. Oh my, all of it. Great. Oh my gosh, beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's such an incredible piece. I mean, when I was looking on your website too, and by the way, I just have to add that hearing you, well, first I looked at your website and I was like, so she's amazing. Okay, so I'm feeling very inspired going into this, but then all of the words that you had to share as well. I'm just so impressed and honored to be able to read your work and be connected with you in any way at all. If this is the only way we connect, great. I'm so happy with that. But
forever, Imani, forever.
Yeah, forever. We're connected forever.
I know the perfect.
Right. Yeah, but I love though that what you said about being called to do things and being called to follow your dream and almost having like a vision of what you and just doing it. I think for me, I get so caught up in my head about all the things and all of that, and so just your sheer tenacity and just it's just so incredible and admirable.
Oh, thank you so much, Imani. And also seeing, just mutual admiration because of the work that you do, going from actor to director, and all of them are technical. All of them are the highest level. And I just want to say I appreciate you as an artist. I appreciate even the growth that I've seen in your, reading your bio, because I'm just getting to know you now. But just the way that you performed those excerpts is just really well done. And I'm a fan. And I know I'm speaking.
Oh, there she is. Thank you. Thank you.
Natasha, I think you accidentally muted yourself.
Sorry. That's something I'm not going to miss when we're all meeting each other. Maybe one day I'll get an argument with someone and say, why don't you just go mute yourself? How about that?
Right.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, I'm just a fan. That was so brilliant. And that made me happy that I was even a part of that. So grateful.
Yeah, that was just beautiful. Made me happy too. Beautiful performance, Imani. And yeah, when I was reading, that was sort of the voice I was hearing as well. So yeah, that final scene, the one you described having in the dream, Natasha, that's some beautiful writing and really brought forward well. If anyone has any questions or comments from the audience, feel free to drop it in the chat or somehow make yourself known. I hope, Natasha and Imani, that you're seeing the wonderful comments in the chat. Everyone who's loved it so much and saying they want to read the book, please do. Also, a question whether, the scene written, is it very close to your dream?
That's a great question. It's almost exact.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, I had a dream. I didn't know how it would fit. I wish the rest of the book came like that. Just tell me what I'm supposed to write. No, but it was so real to me. It was so real. I could see it and I wanted to honor it. So
yeah, well, that came through. It is so romantic and rich and, kind of visceral. And then the ending is so wrenching, the love taken away. Yeah, just gorgeous. Yeah. And another question, whether you've always had access to your dreams.
That's a good question. I've had dreams, but just like anyone, you wake up, you're like, oh, and then you're like, I'll write it down later, and then you forget to, and then it's gone. Then you get the advice to leave, like a pencil and paper next to your, next to your bed or something. Yeah. Just with this one and the one that sparked Grace, I just knew they were different. They both stopped me in my tracks. Grace was a daydream, so it was a little different. But this was a night dream that broke my heart. And I just knew I was supposed to do something with it. And I know artists say that inspiration comes from a lot of places. Like some people will say the writing gods or the universe. So it comes from different places. So I don't feel like it's like so odd that dreams would inspire an artist this way. Or images, sounds even. So yeah, I just wanted to honor it because I felt I was chosen to tell the story.
Yeah, and then so you had to find out though those details of the massacre and all of that link so closely with the tragedy, the sadness you felt in the dream. So bringing all that to life, yeah, I can imagine you were meant to do that. So Kate says you made it real to us too. Powerful. And Karen asks, she says she's never had such a lucid dream in her life. How difficult was it to bring it into story form? I'm with Karen, and what you said is so true. If you don't write it down, it's gone. Yeah. So was this hard to do?
It wasn't. Well, the hard part was that it was like 3 a.m. and I'm telling my husband I need to get up and I'm crying. I'm like, I'm okay, it's okay. And then I'm Googling, in the dark, trying not to wake up my family because it was so real. I can't explain it other than to say that. And I wrote it down. It felt like I'm saying the same thing, like, that's what happened. That's what happened. There were little other details where she's running away and this grass that was between these two, but there was like things that I did have to leave out because they didn't make sense in her running. But that's what happened. That's how I feel. Like I have no religious view. I don't like follow my dreams or track, have a dream book or anything. It's just, that's what happened.
That's amazing. Imani, a question for you. How you feel about performing on Zoom versus a live stage? How is that? How has that been for you?
Oh, wow. I think I've officially adjusted. I mean, I think it's just a different medium, almost in some ways a different art form, I think, for actors. And so it is, I like it though. I think that it was a way for a lot of us who love art to sort of stay afloat and not go too crazy at home. But I think, I think a lot of folks want to get back in person and see each other. But this has been lovely though. I think as long as I have my ring light and I got the Wi-Fi, I'm okay. I'm all right. So
true. I mean, we've found that in some ways it's, I won't say better, but there are positives to the Zoom that we don't have in performance when an actor and an author are paired together. We have your face right there, and so, I mean, unless it's a baseball game with the big screen, you don't get that, or a rock concert. So seeing both of you, everyone up close and being able to have this kind of casual kind of conversation. The stage isn't always amenable to that. So we have found definite upsides. Yeah. And Leah. Sorry, Imani didn't get to hear the applause. On the other, glad this format allowed me to watch and listen from another country. And what, you're in Guadalajara? In Mexico. That's amazing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us. That's beautiful. It is one of the benefits of this. Yeah. And as Shelley says, as an audience member, she can cry in private. Yeah. No group hugs though, or going out for a drink to, clear the head of all of that. Yeah. Well, it has truly been a wonderful evening. And I don't know, if there are any final questions. We can't thank you enough, both of you, Imani and Natasha, and encourage everyone, order the book. You probably can't get it today because it's, it's just selling like, as they say, proverbial hotcakes. But yeah, it deserves to be, and order your copy and you won't regret it. It's a beautiful book. And Patty says standing ovation. So yeah, that's one thing we can't do with the Zoom. So imagine a standing ovation right now. So you both richly deserve it. Yeah. And hope to see you both again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Imani. Oh my gosh, mind's blown.
No, thank you. Thank you for writing this. Thank you. My mom, by the way, her book club, this will be the next book when you have, the second reprinting, but yeah, absolutely.
There you go.